Hi class, welcome to week 4. First of all, I want to congratulate you. You're doing a really great job. I appreciate that many of you are very new to this content. You're new to Canvas, and I can see how hard you're working. I'm going to take a slight pivot on some of the ways we're approaching things because one of the things I feel like we're missing out on right now is how fun data is. I worked as a statistician. It's how I went through grad school. I've published a lot of work, and I think data can be really fun. Yes, there is work involved to get to the fun of it, but I want to start looking at things a titch more theoretically, and I want you to really begin to understand why we look at data the way we do, how to think about data, and to think about that story, because that's what data does to us. Data tells us a story and gives us ideas and inspires us to realize variables we hadn't considered before, or um, ideas that we didn't really know should have been applicable at the time, right? And so a lot of the stats that we're going to be looking at, we're going to focus less on can we calculate them, and we're going to focus more on why. Why would I choose that statistic? Why do I need to look at ordinal data versus interval data? And why would I consider this type of measurement tool versus this type of measurement tool? And so I want to get our feet wet and our hands wet in that. So over the next 2 weeks, we are going to be doing chapter 4 and chapter 5, and much of that is focused on how to calculate. We are not going to be calculating. The calculations you've done up to this point, and that's where we're going to stop. We are going to use what you have done up to this point. And so that was not wasted time nor work. But now we're going to start thinking about, okay, we have our feet wet a little bit and how. Let's start really looking at the why. And so here are your learning materials. This is some key information, understanding hypothesis testing, what an actual hypothesis is. A lot of times people think a hypothesis is a question. A hypothesis is not a question. A hypothesis is a statement. I believe it's this, right? And so we're going to look at that, and then we're going to look at how confident we can be and whether we're correct. This is extremely important. When we say confidence, this is a percent, but not a flimsy percent. This is saying that we can confidently say A affected B, that only 5% is by chance. You'll notice you never hear anyone say, I'm 100% confident. Lysol spray or whatever kills 99.9% of germs. Do you know that's actually a confidence interval? Do you know that they actually can't say 100% because you can never be 100% sure? There's just not a tiny thing in there that made that thing happen. Right? And so this is why understanding a confidence interval is really important. So when people say, hey, this is how confident we are, we know that we are really confident for that population studied, and hopefully it was a good sample. And we can say, yeah, that medication will treat that. Yes, side effects will only be experienced by this percent of the population. This is all looking at confidence intervals. And here we start looking at types of testing. And we are not going to spend time calculating these tests. We are going to look at why we would select a test and what reason and what information is that test going to provide us. It's really important if we know whether to determine to do a t-test or whether we need to do a regression analysis, which happens to be one of my favorite tests to run, and whether it actually is something that can be tested. There are things that we really can't test, whether there are too many variables, the population affected is too large and we can't get a good sample. If it's something ethically we cannot test. Correlations can tell us a lot of information because though it won't predict a cause and effect, it will tell us that there seems to be a relationship. And then at that point, maybe we can begin to test, exploit, and figure out what is that relationship so we can get to the cause and effect aspect of it. Again, here are just some more videos. These are not as much focused on, again, as how to do it, but why we would do it and what would happen within that doing. The other thing I have for you here is a summary table that is broken. And like magic, it's not broken anymore. So I made this summary table for you so you want to know how to do this. And so you want to take a look at this. I don't know if flashcards is the right way. I tried to give you examples of what that would look like. Your book goes through it too, but I just thought this might be a little bit simpler. And also your lab 4 will be you doing some of this stuff. So let's talk about lab 4. Uh, your first part kind of looks like a quiz. I built it in that format, but it is not a quiz. It is not timed. You do only have one attempt and you will not be able to see the correct answers, only so I can try to keep a little bit of autonomy. And then here is, so lab part 1, so you can open it up and read about it. You're going to do some matching for calculations, choosing for multiple choice. And then you are going to do some calculations. So questions like this is basically that table I was just showing you. I want to connect you to the right statistic for what you're looking for. And then you are actually going to do a few of those calculations and so on. For this part, this is the fun part. So after you complete the first part of the lab, I want you to choose one of those statistics and create a hypothesis. And this means you will also need to have a null hypothesis. And here you can follow this format right here. And I want you to think about, if you ran a calculation, what would you expect to find, right? This is all theory. And so this is you just being creative, thinking about, okay, what can I glean from this statistic? What does it tell us about patient care? If C-section rate is higher than expected, for example. And then what I want you to do after you've completed that first part is I want you to run your ideas through whatever AI prompt you have. This is a back and forth. This is you using AI as a research assistant. What didn't you think of? What you might be missing? What should you look at? What additional testing could possibly be done? These are for you to get creative and have fun and to go back and forth and see if there's something that you can learn greater than what you had already been exposed to, or that you find errors in what was suggested. What you will turn in is all of the above, and make sure with this part that you've included all of your notes. You can just attach them to the back, whatever. Make sure that you've highlighted what your prompts are. So maybe you cut and paste it and you highlight in yellow what your prompts are, because I want to be able to see your process, and then you will write a reflection. Okay, a very long video. And so go on and let me know if you have questions.